This one is, I think, taken from Colonel Scott's computer, and I think it was put in for reasons connected with that. But let's look at the E. There we are, Exhibit EE. There you see paragraph 3 on the screen now, and that does contain the words which were in the one we saw earlier. But let me just repeat them for the benefit of those who haven't been able to follow properly. The Provincial Commissioner, Lieutenant General Mpembe, informed the meeting that she was involved in meetings with the leadership of AMCU, namely Mr. Joseph Matunjwa, to resolve the current situation for the whole morning. Mr. Matunjwa was supposed to indicate at 900 whether the protesters on the copy were prepared to lay down their weapons. Mr. Matunjwa failed to provide feedback as agreed. That's the passage that was put to you. And what Advocate Bond wants to know, does that coincide with your recollection of what happened at that meeting?
Correct, Chairperson. If I need to respond, is that the culture in the police is that when your senior speaks in the meeting, you do not say things in front of the other juniors. But I think, Chairperson, that's why I'm saying I think Lieutenant General Mbombo will be in a position to explain why she speaks about agreement.
General, my question to you is really the following. You know at this stage that Mr. Matunjwa is standing outside the JOC and is wanting to give feedback to the police and has asked to give the feedback to the Provincial Commissioner.
No. I'm not sure that you want him to admit that initially. He said he was outside for half an hour. The witness said eventually he saw him and went out to speak to him, but I'm not sure that you've got him to say at what stage he realized that Mr. Matunjwa was waiting outside. I think that point must be clarified first also, before the question you now want to put can be put to him.
We have established, General, haven't we, that you saw Mr. Matunjwa just before you went into the JOC meeting, and he asked to see the Provincial Commissioner, and you then went into the JOC meeting. Isn't that correct?
Yes, Chairperson, I did see that.
General, surely then when you went into the JOC meeting, you should have said to the Provincial Commissioner, but Mr. Matunjwa is here, I've just seen him, he's wanting to give feedback to the police, let's go and hear what it is.
Chairperson,
sorry, just a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was Mr. Matunjwa wanting to give feedback to the police, or was he looking for transport back to the scene?
There's no mention of transport in the passages that I referred to earlier. Mr. Matunjwa has simply come back from the copy at this stage, and he's wanting to report back to the Provincial Commissioner about his engagement with the strikers. That's...
Sorry, he's actually come back in his own vehicle, as far as I can recall, on the Thursday. Yes, he did.
Yes, I know that. Let's look at 114. Oh, let it carry on. Oh, okay, get that just now.
Transport issue hasn't arisen at this stage. But the question really, General, is that Mr. Matunjwa has come back and he wants to see the Provincial Commissioner to give feedback. Why tell the Provincial Commissioner that he's there and suggest that you go and get his feedback?
Advocate, I need to put the things also in the right perspective in a very short brief. The Provincial Commissioner was referring to her earlier interaction with Mr. Matunjwa personally. That's why she was even specific about 9 o'clock. By the time that Mr. Matunjwa wanted to give the feedback to the Provincial Commissioner, I did testify that the Provincial Commissioner was not there. And I even said that he was at the hospital. And when I wanted to give feedback to Mr. Matunjwa, he has gone again. But the Provincial Commissioner knew that Mr. Matunjwa did come back. But what the Provincial Commissioner is referring to here, it is her earlier interaction with Mr. Matunjwa himself.
So it's a simple question, General. Did you say to the Provincial Commissioner, I've just seen Mr. Matunjwa outside moments ago. He's just come back from the Kopi, and I've just seen him moments ago. Did you say that to the Provincial Commissioner?
No, Chairperson, because I could see that the Provincial Commissioner was referring to her earlier interaction with Mr. Matunjwa.
General, if we can go now to the August. And I'm going to ask you some questions relating to the conversation that you had with the strikers at the railway line on the 13th of August. I know that some of my colleagues have cross-examined you on this aspect, and I do not intend to repeat the questions they have asked you. But there are just two aspects there that I need to ask you about. Firstly, you've testified that you were concerned that this group of strikers, on their way back to the Kopi, would go into the informal settlement and injure, maim, or kill people. I think those are the three specific words that you used. Is that correct?
No, Chairperson. But what I said is that it was the briefing that I have received that they might injure or kill those that are going at work.
But you were concerned that the strikers might injure or kill people in the vicinity and in particular in the informal settlement. That was your concern. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson. Those that are going at work.
Yes, the ones that are not participating in the strike. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
Now, we also know, and I'm sure you accept this, that while you were having that conversation with the strikers at the railway line, they repeatedly asked you to escort them to the Kopi. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairperson.
Now, General, if those strikers had an intention to injure or kill people along the way back to the Kopi, why would they ask the police to escort them back to the Kopi?
In my understanding, it was that it was because I wanted to disarm them. I wanted them as voluntarily hand over their weapons. And that the reason that they gave me is that they were attacked by NUM people, and which I did not agree.
Yes, but the point is simple, General. If they harbored these intentions to hurt people or even to kill people, why would they ask the police to take them to the Kopi?
Chairperson, I don't know why they asked the police to escort them. I cannot think or say what their intentions. But what I do know is that there were people that died as a result of those movements and so on. But I cannot say precisely by whom.
Now, you agree with me that while the strikers said that they wanted you to escort them back to the Kopi, they also said to you that it didn't have to be the Kopi. It could be a location of your choice. In other words, they could be escorted back to some other location. You agree that they said that?
No, Chairperson, I do not agree. They were precisely saying the Kopi. I even asked them, where were you? They said at the Kopi. And I said, are you coming there? They said, yes.
Okay, well, perhaps then we need to go to Exhibit QQ2, to page 10. Can somebody get it for me, please? page 10, and I'll give you the line number in a moment. So if you can look at line 20 on that page. This Lonman Worker 1 says the following: "We are at the mountain, but if you want us, we will come to the location of your choice. We will come to the stadium to hear what our employer says regarding the request." You see that?
Yes, I see it.
So there you have a striker saying to you, it doesn't have to be the Kopi, take us to a location of your choice, for example, the stadium. Call our employer to speak to us, and we will give you our weapons.
There were many of them that said, at the copy, we will give you at the copy.
This man who's described here as Lonman Worker 1, was he, as far as you could see, one of the leaders of the group?
Chairperson, at that moment, I couldn't see who's the leader because there were so many self-appointed leaders who were talking on behalf of the strikers. There are about more than 10, if I remember, or maybe the video can be clear. But there was one who was even giving others instructions. But there were many that were speaking and talking. How do they feel and what their intentions are?
As far as I can remember from the video, one person did quite a lot of speaking. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
Is that the person described here as Lonman Worker 1?
Yes, Chairperson. I'm not sure whether it is the same one. Maybe. I'm not definitely sure whether it is the same one. Because the one that spoke on that day, as I testified, is Mr. Noki. That I don't know whether it's him that described him as Lonman Worker 1.
And after this Lonman Worker 1, this person described Lonman Worker 1, says what is transcribed here on page 10 of the transcript, did any of the other strikers present disagree or indicate that he didn't agree with what this worker had said?
Chairperson, as far as I remember, the video can be there. They didn't disagree, but the majority of them, they were referring them at the copy. And I remember even I said to them, "Nizongipha zona kuphi?" Then they said, "At the mountain." That's what they said, and that was in majority. That the video can also be clear on that.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, with regard to this paragraph, my reading of this paragraph was that they will go to the stadium to be addressed by, or to a location to be addressed by the employer, but not to go and hand up the weapons. Not in this paragraph, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's correct, Ms. Barnes. I think there are two issues. The one was the place where the employer was going to address them, if the employer was minded to address them. And the second issue is the place at which the weapons would thereafter be handed over. And I'm not sure that this passage that you put covers both of those events.
Well, if one goes up the page a little bit to line 15, I think it's quite clear. It's the same worker, Lonman Worker 1. He says, "What we are saying is that you let us go to the place where we are gathered, and we will give you," that probably should be our weapons, "when you bring our employer." And then if you carry on going down, "We are at the mountain, but if you want us, we will come to the location of your choice. We will come to the stadium to hear what our employer says regarding our request." So it's the same worker who's talking about, if they are escorted, two things are intended to happen. The employer will come and talk to them, and the weapons will be handed over. But this striker is saying that does not have to be the copy. It can be a location of your choice.
Sorry, Ms. Barnes, but if you look at the previous paragraph, it says we will hand you the weapons at the copy, because the place where they are is the copy. Then the second paragraph says the employer can address us wherever they want. So there it specifically says, we are saying is that you must let us go to the place where we are. And the place where they are at that moment is the copy. That is where we will give you the weapons. Then you must bring the employer.
Sorry, Chairperson. Sorry,
Perhaps I think the witness would like to say something.
Chairperson, even on the same page there on top, they still mention the copy. And I remember very well when I asked them, "Nizongipha zona kuphi?" And they said at the copy.
But General, didn't this give you a way out? You now had strikers saying, it's, the copy is not the only possible location. Didn't this give you a way out on the day?
No, Chairperson. Actually, what I wanted for them to do is to drop the weapons, hand them over to me, and I could have escorted them. There could have been nothing has happened. But for the fact that they mentioned any other location, it couldn't give me any way out.
General, we've heard evidence in relation to Warrant Officer Kun on the 13th and in relation to the tear gas that he fired. Now, what that evidence has been, and I think it's accepted to this extent, is that Warrant Officer Kun fired tear gas on the 13th on the basis of a command which he said that he heard, but he could not identify.
No. I don't think you can say it's accepted. What is accepted, whether it's correct or not, is a matter we will be in a position we hope to be able to make a finding on at the end. But you can't say it's accepted. You're trying to keep an open mind. What is accepted is that Kuhn claimed that he had received an order and which he had obeyed. But there are certain problems in respect of that claim which were covered in the evidence. But it's too early to say whether we accept what he said on the point or reject it.
Chair, I apologize. I phrased it poorly. I was really referring to Kuhn's version, that Warrant Officer Kuhn's version is, which seems to be clear, is that he heard a command to fire tear gas, but he could not identify where that command had come from. Is that how you understand his version?
Yes, Chairperson, with the addition of saying he did not even know who gave the command.
Received the command at all.
Correct, Chairperson.
Now, my question is simply this, General. Did you recommend that disciplinary action be taken against Warrant Officer Kuhn?
He's dealt with the point in the evidence. He said initially he didn't, but when he was re-examined by Mr. Semenya, I think it was. Sorry? Mr. Ngwana, sorry. Yes, it was Mr. Ngwana, I remember. When he was re-examined by Mr. Ngwana, one of the points he made was he'd thought about it subsequently, and he'd come to the conclusion that disciplinary steps should be taken, and he was either going to do the necessary or had already done so. But certainly that matter has been covered. There may well be other questions you want to ask about it, but that's the evidence he gave. I think you weren't with us at the time.
If we can go now to Exhibit G4. This is the debriefing that you held with first Mr. Zikwana and then Mr. Matunjwa on the 15th of August. If you look at page 684, paginated page 684, you're having a conversation here with Mr. Matunjwa, and perhaps one should just go back to 683. Sorry, just so that you can get the context and try and recall what you were talking about. You're telling Mr. Matunjwa about the firearms that the strikers had gotten hold of. And on page 683, you say, I know there is one, but there might be 10, there might be 6, and we understand.
That passage isn't the part that's being shown on the screen. Perhaps we can go down a bit.
Sorry, that's the bottom of page.
Yes, give us the line number and we'll pick it up. Yes, it's line 29.
You say there might be 10, there might be 6, and then onto the next page, well, if we go down to line 5, Mr. Matunjwa says, where did they get these firearms? And then you say, no, remember now that thing that happened. First they took police firearms. And then Mr. Matunjwa says, oh, not one. And you then say, no, they did not take one. They did not take one, and we lost our focus. And we did not want to kill people. So that is what we are saying. Now, it seems to us, General, that what you're saying here is that you lost focus on the 13th of August, and I'd like you to tell the Commission what you meant by that comment.
No, Chairperson, I didn't say so.
Mr. Matunjwa, line 10 on this page, you are... Sorry, I beg your pardon. General Mpembe. Sorry, let me get it right. General Mpembe, according to line 10 on this page, when Mr. Matunjwa had suggested that only one firearm had been taken, you said, no, didn't take one. They didn't take one. And then you said, we lost focus, and we did not want to kill people. So that's what we are saying. There are state firearms there. And then what Ms. Bonds wants to know from you is, what did you mean when you said we lost focus? Unless you suggest that the transcription is wrong. But if you accept the correctness of the transcription, she wants to know from you, what did you mean by saying we lost our focus?
Actually, I was only saying to Mr. Matunjwa that they didn't take only one firearm. They took more firearm. But not referring any loss of focus on the 13th.
General, you say, and we lost our focus and we did not want to kill people. Have you got no explanation for what you meant by that comment?
Chairperson, as I'm saying, I didn't mean to have lost focus on the 13th. My evidence to the Commission is that I did take a decision based on the situational appropriateness. And to Mr. Matunjwa here, I wanted only to say to him, they didn't take one firearm, they take more firearm. But losing of the focus, really to me here, I agree, it doesn't make sense.
Because, General, we've analysed the evidence in relation to the 13th, and it seems to us that what happened on the 13th was that you were in fact indecisive, and I need you to comment on this, and I'm going to.
When you say it was indecisive, on what facts do you base that proposition? Because I think he has to know the facts upon which you base it before he can answer you properly.
Indeed, in the sense that, General, it seems to us, if we look at all the evidence, and I'll take you through that evidence in a moment, that you first took a decision that the strikers should be escorted, and you then gave that order. You then changed your mind, and you took another decision that the strikers should in fact be stopped.
On what is that's not his evidence. I understand you may be proposing to put statements to him to that effect, but that's certainly not his evidence. His evidence is quite clear that Originally, he wanted to take the weapons away, but he decided, applying the principle of situational appropriateness, that if they didn't hand over their weapons, he was simply going to escort them to the kopje, because otherwise there would be bloodshed. It's a tiny situation. So you can't put it to him as if that's something that that's an objective fact, that's something he admits. So I think you should reformulate the question, because as it's presently put, I'm not prepared to allow it.
Well, perhaps you can tell us, Ms. Barnes, what evidence it is that you rely on when you allege that he took a decision that they must be stopped. Exactly what are you alluding to there?
I will deal with the evidence shortly. Commissioner, I didn't suggest that it was this witness's version. But what I'm putting to the witnesses is, having looked at the evidence, which I will take you to in a moment, is that is what we're going to argue that the Commission should find at the end, is that you took one decision and then changed your mind and took the other decision.
We would like to be appraised of exactly where it appears on the transcript or a statement that a decision was taken for them to be stopped. Perhaps you can refer us to that before you put the proposition, so that we can be appraised of where it emanates from at least.
I'm going to do that. I simply wanted the witness to know where I was going at the outset.
I know, but the way you put it was even. Never mind. Let's move on. I take it you're going to refer to the statement of Constable Plaatje, which we were given copies of, and which he's been given a copy of. But are you going to rely on anything else?
Yes, there are quite a number of statements that are before the Commission already, which I'm not going to refer to. But these are two new statements which say the same thing. And I'll refer to those now.
All right. Well, then you must put them to him so he can then deal with them. But I understand that you are really saying to us that by way of a preliminary point, you put to the witness what you're going to put to him in more detail. You summarized it in one sentence. But I think before I can expect him to give an answer, you should put to him the passages in these two statements upon which you rely. Now, which one do you want to rely on first?
There will both be new exhibits.
No, that's why I'm asking you. Which one do you want to rely on first?
Firstly, the statement of Constable Zondi of POP.
That's the handwritten statement. That would be Triple H 57. And thereafter, the statement of Constable Plaatje. Is that right?
That's right.
So that will be Triple H 58.
If we look then first at the statement of Constable Zondi, do you have that?
Make sure the witness has got it. Have you got exhibit Triple H 57, the statement of Constable Zondi, in front of you?
Correct, Chairperson, I do have it.
If you look at paragraph 5 of that statement, it says, General, instruct us to let the group past. We moved the group past to the shack's direction and said we must escort them. And then the following paragraph, paragraph 6, the language is a little unclear, but at the outset it says, then the consents of once the group, I assume that means consent, or consensus perhaps. Once the group get in the shacks, it will be a big problem because police are not familiar with the shacks. And then comes the important line. General Mpembe issued a command of blocking the group from going to the shacks. And it then goes on, the first Nyala from the far left of the group drove in front, and the others followed on the right, and other police officers on foot. You see that?
I see it, Chairperson.
So that particular officer is saying that you issued a command to block the group of strikers. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, Chairperson, I do have a comment. My comment will also start from the evidence that is already being before the Commission. As it was firstly presented by Advocate Madlanga and by the evidence leaders, It was also presented through the SABS 15. And firstly, I said I did not brief any junior member personally. Secondly, I decided to go to intercept, and I gave my reasons thoroughly why I decided. Thirdly, I only briefed the commanders there on the scene. And secondly, and lastly, is that I did not give any member the command of any other. But the briefing that I gave to the commanders was that we should make sure that the protesters, strikers, do not enter the copy. And
don't you mean copy? You mean the informal settlement?
Informal settlement. Thanks, Chairperson. Informal settlement, and also there was another area of the shaft of the mine on the left-hand side. But in that briefing, I also gave my reasons to say my earlier briefing when I arrived on that day is that actually the people who are targeted by the strikers are those that are reporting on duty because they don't want them to report on duty. Then as a result, we don't know where are they staying in the informal settlement. And I went on very extensive to prove that informal settlement was one of the key points.
All right, if we can look then at the next statement, that's the statement from Constable Plaiki. Similarly, at paragraph 5 of that statement, he says the following. While General Mpembe was addressing the crowd, they stand up and walk away. General Mpembe instructs us to stop them. One Yala of Public Order Police Unit drove after and ended up in front of walking miners trying to stop them. Do you have a comment on that paragraph?
Correct, Chairperson. Chairperson, my comment is still the same to that one of Nkosinati Regional Zondi. And there is also similarity on the statements on Triple H 57. And then paragraph 2, he says that on Monday around 12 o'clock midday, we got instructions from General Mpembe to go and stop the group of people on the railway line who intending to attack other members who were not striking. That's how he interprets it. And I take that as an individual interpretation. And when you check on page, paragraph 2, it says, I was officially on duty when we were deployed at Marikana Minecraft. Captain Queen was our commander for that deployment. Now, it is important to indicate here that that commander is the one that briefed the members. I did not brief the members, and the members can also confirm that.
Because you'll know, General, that it's of course not just these two statements, but a large number of other statements that are already before the Commission that I'm not going to traverse.
They were put to him in cross-examination, and he dealt with them. The versions put in these various statements were conflicting in any event, but he dealt with them fully already. I don't want to stop you from raising a new point, but if it's simply the points that have been put to him already, then I don't think I should allow it.
I'm simply making the point, Chair, that the common thread in these statements and in the two new statements that I've introduced today is officers hearing an instruction by yourself to stop the strikers. That's the common thread.
Yes, but of course the one that you were just referring to now, Triple H 58, in para 5, talks about General Mpembe instructing them to stop the strikers, and then the next sentence seems to indicate the nature of the stoppage that he envisaged, because it says one Inyala of Public Order Police Unit drove after and ended up in front of the walking miners trying to stop them. So it would seem, if this is correct, and I'm not sure the witness agrees with it, but if there was any instruction conveyed to the commanders which they may have passed on, it related to stopping by blocking rather than stopping by firing tear gas or anything else.
And General, the other relevant piece of evidence in this, on this point we submit is the statement of Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak. That statement is Exhibit G 17. And if we look at paragraph 5 of that statement, this is where Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak refers to arriving at the scene on the 13th after the incident has taken place. And he then says that police officers speak to him and are very angry and upset with you, so much so that they in fact threaten your life. And they say, the statement is in Afrikaans, but the important words are these. They say that you are responsible for what happened because you gave the incorrect commands. So the Afrikaans words are verkeerde opdragte, and the English translation would be the incorrect commands. Now, my question to you is, why would these officers be threatening your life if you hadn't in fact given any commands?
So, sorry, Mr. Chairman, before the witness answers, what were the incorrect commands that were allegedly given by the witness before he can answer?
All it's suggested, as you say, it's 8 lines from the foot of that paragraph, where Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak is saying what he was told after he landed and presumably alighted from his helicopter. Then he says that some of the members are very, very, very angry, mentions him that they blamed him for the members who were dead, en dat hy verkeerde opdragte gegee het, and that he gave wrong commands. Now, that's very vague. It's not clear what wrong commands, in their opinion, had been given. There are various possibilities, but I think you should ask the witness whether he's able to comment at all.
Yes, General.
Certainly, it's not clear that the wrong commands that they complained of, if there were any, were the ones that you are now putting to the witness. So let's get him a chance to answer.
For example, one of the commands was that escort them. We can't disarm them. I don't want a Tatani situation here. That's another command.
Yes, the commands aren't identified. I'm simply putting what was stated to Vermaak, to the witness, and perhaps he has some sort of explanation for this.
But you don't want to identify which command, because this one is vague. There are so many commands. He says, I can't confront them.
And doesn't this whole point rather emanate from the difference of opinion between Colonel Marafi and this witness?
Commissioner, the commands aren't identified in Vermaak's statement, and with the greatest of respect, I never suggested that they were. I'm simply asking whether the witness has any explanation for what Vermaak describes having happened here.
Chairperson.
Sorry, let me ask a few questions first. Hopefully I can clear the ground. Were you aware of the fact that some of the members had said what appears from the passages that have been put to you, had said that to Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak, that they blamed you for the fact that the members were dead because you had given wrong commands? Were you aware that that complaint had been raised by them against you to Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak?
No, Chairperson, but what I was aware of, and I stated in this commission, is that Lieutenant Colonel Marafe was not happy with my decision of letting the strikers to go if they don't hand over. And I even explained it in details that he wanted actually the strikers should have been dispersed. But that they complain, I don't know. But what I do know, Chairperson, again, is that Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak, while I arrived on the scene, he said my life is in danger. But he never explained to me that there were members that were complaining about me.
Ms. Barnes, I think it's clear the witness can't take this matter any further. It may well be a matter of argument. It may be that subsequent witnesses may tell us what was meant, but I don't think we profitably engaged in exercising and in getting this witness effectively to guess what these people meant.
I'm happy to move on at this stage, Chair. Thank you. General, if we can now turn to some of the events at Potchefstroom after the events of the 16th. Now, the Potchefstroom meeting took place from the 27th of August to the 7th of September. Is that right?
Correct, Chairperson. If I can also check the collapse.
Call-ups are exhibits before us. I mean, I haven't the relevant statistics at my fingertips, but I can get them quite quickly. Do we have to spend time with assistance from my friends? Do we have to ask the witness about it? Well, to stop you, if you've got a point to make, you must make it. But I don't know that the exact details that you asked for are necessary for the point to be made. But if I'm wrong on that, you will correct me, I think. What exactly do you want to know about the call-up and the conference?
I don't want to know about the call-ups. I was just clarifying the dates, the Potchefstroom dates with the General. I don't think they're contentious. We can move on. But I'd like to refer to you a portion of your evidence.
The dates are on record. They extend over a period that is on record.
Indeed. I'm going to be asking the witness some questions about his involvement in Potchefstroom. So I just wanted to help to orientate the General as well with regard to those dates. Now, in your evidence in chief, you testified about the events of Potchefstroom, and I need to take you to a particular passage. It's page 11168 of the transcript. Okay, that's perfect. It's line 5 on that page. And you say the following. Chairperson, earlier on, I said at Potchefstroom we gathered all those members that took part on the 13th, and during that discussion, that's when Warrant Officer Kun was asked in the presence of the members there, and then he said he heard an order, but he could not know who gave the order or whose voice was that. It's probably not necessary for me to go on any further. What I'm really trying to establish here is not so much what happened in relation to Warrant Officer Kun here, but the session that you're referring to here. Are you referring to a session where all the police officers that were involved in the events of the 13th got together in a breakaway session, so to speak, and discussed what had happened and put together a narrative? Is that what you're referring to there?
Correct, Chairperson. But I also wanted to correct there at, I think it's line 13, because I did indicate to the Commission that Captain Tupe said I did give the order, but there he says I did not. I just want...
that's other way. Yes, he says, line 12, General, I heard you giving the order, and you then said to him, I did not give the order. Then you went on to explain, if you had given the order, it would have been over the radio, and all of them would have heard it, and only one person wouldn't have fired a tear gas canister and so on. So that's all clearly there stated. And you in fact showed us your diary in which you'd made contemporaneous notes on the point as well.
Thanks, Chairperson. I didn't see the one where Captain Tupe said I did. I just wanted to also...
Because you weren't looking at line 12, but now I've drawn your attention to it, you see it.
Thanks, Chairperson.
So, General, can we just clarify, are you referring here to the meeting where those of you involved in the 13th gathered together in a separate room and produced a narrative of what happened on the 13th?
I said it before, and I said it, yes, Chairperson.
And that was, in fact, the modus operandi at Potchefstroom, that individuals that had been involved in particular events would go form themselves into breakaway groups, and they would then produce a written narrative of the events as far as they could recall them. Is that how it worked?
Yes, Chairperson. If you say modus operandi, I only know of the group where I was involved. I didn't take part to other groups, but maybe other groups could have done it in a different way. My answer on yes is only with that group of the 13th.
You remember when this particular session took place at Potchefstroom?
As I indicated before, yes, Chairperson, according to the collapse.
Yes, but this particular session where a narrative was produced in relation to the 13th, do you remember when that happened, or at least whether it was in the first week or the second week?
It was the first week.
I just understand that when this group met, was there a narrative was there something that was written down as regards what was agreed on as being the events that occurred on the 13th?
No, Chairperson. What was happening there is that each and every one was expected to give information as far as you know, the information that you have, the information that you have a personal knowledge of. But there was an agreed version.
Would all of this be written down somewhere? Would there be a recording of what everyone was saying, was put on paper?
Correct, Chairperson. It will be given on paper, and thereafter we go back and we give to Colonel Fesser. And while it's given to Colonel Fesser, the one that comes from the group, he will say, but this point is not in there, and it will be put in.
Thank you.
But General, isn't it correct that this session produced a document that, I call it a narrative because that's the term that comes up in the when we've gone through the material. Isn't it correct that this group sat down and produced a document which said what happened on the 13th?
No, Chairperson, what I say is that you were supposed to be together and you compile the information as far as your personal knowledge is concerned, and you'll also make sure that is being given to the last document. That's what I'm saying. But it is not an agreed document.
Are you saying that everybody in the session would write down what they thought happened?
What has happened according to their personal knowledge.
No, I'm not sure I understand this now. I can understand you had various breakaway sessions, and the people who were involved in a particular aspect of the matter would go away into a particular breakaway session and discuss that aspect. And would there be someone whose job it was to be the rapporteur of what was discussed at that session, duty to, when you went back into the main section, to report what had come out at the breakaway session? Was it the duty of that person to report what was said, or did each person report separately, or how did it work? You know what often happens in this kind of situation where you have breakaway sessions. In the breakaway session, someone is appointed as the rapporteur. It's his job or her job to compile the report of the breakaway session. And then when you all go back in to the plenary session, then the reporter then reports what was said, and then obviously some people then add extra things. That's one way breakaway sessions work. Another way that could work, I suppose, that each person at the breakaway session could write his own note of what happened, and then everyone could go back and say what they had recorded. Now, can you remember how this particular breakaway session worked, the one that you were talking about in the passage which we see on the screen? Yes, and sorry, before you answer that, perhaps something else you should answer, which will help us to follow what happened. This breakaway session, this is a breakaway session, is it, that you're talking about in the passage that we have before us? Is that right?
Correct, Chairperson.
Now, obviously all the people who were with you at the railway line weren't at Roots, weren't at Potchefstroom, is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson. Only the commanders.
Anyway, so how many people took part in this breakaway session that you're talking about here in the passage that we have on the screen? Obviously not all 70s. Approximately how many would it have been?
Chairperson, I can also know them by their call-up instruction on that day.
Yes.
And the commanders. They can be more than 5.
Yes, yes. Four or five or a few more. Right.
Yes.
Now we know that Kuhn was one of them, and we know that Captain Tupi was another.
Correct, and also Lieutenant Colonel Marafe.
And Lieutenant Colonel Marafe, and was Lieutenant Colonel Vermaak there as well?
He was also there.
Also part of that group.
He was also part of that group.
And anybody else that you can remember?
There was also a captain that was coming from POP in Johannesburg.
Yes.
And
I
also
take- yes.
Colonel Silwani was there.
Yes. Well, perhaps over the lunch adjournment you can have a look at the call-up instructions and try to refresh your memory further on the matter. Now, was somebody at this breakaway session, was somebody acting as a kind of rapporteur or chairperson to get from the various members what they had to contribute on the particular topic that was under discussion?
No, Chairperson. What happened is that we will go and sit and we discuss it amongst ourselves. And while we discuss it amongst ourselves, then we will go back. And when we go back, each one will present. And hence, my notes, I took them on the diary, which I also submitted to this commission. And when the report is done, actually, individually, they will go to Colonel Fesser. And Colonel Fesser, we don't talk, we go to Colonel Fesser, he types what you... And then Colonel Fesser will put it on the slide. And then now all of us will take part. Then the other one will say, but my point is not in there. And one will also say, your point is not in there. And that's the kind of the rapporteur that took place.
Thank you. Is it convenient, Ms. Barnes, if we take the comfort break at this stage?
Indeed, Chair.
We'll take a comfort break for 10 minutes. Commission resumes. I thought we'd sat, but we've taken too long a comfort break, which is why I came back as soon as I saw the General at his place. But I'm afraid that I was precipitate. I came in too early because Ms. Barnes wasn't with us. But fortunately, she has now arrived. And we give her a minute, she will be at her place, and she can continue. But did I tell you already under oath? If I didn't, I'm telling you now. Ms. Barnes, I'm sorry I came back too early. Please forgive me. I didn't intend to embarrass you. But would you like to carry on with your cross-examination?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, General, in relation to the breakaway session that we've been talking about in relation to the 13th, are you telling this Commission that there wasn't, at the end of that session, one document produced that compiled all the notes from the various police officers present into one?
No, he's saying the opposite. What he said, was, unless I misunderstood him, that people contributed their inputs to the discussion, that Colonel Visser typed it out. Is that right? Is that what you said, wasn't it? Or did I misunderstand? Is that right, General?
Correct, Chairperson.
Yeah. So at the end of the exercise, there would have been a document typed by Colonel Visser, including the inputs that came from the various people. Is that correct also?
Correct, Chairperson.
Yeah.
Was Colonel Visser in the breakaway session?
No, he didn't say that. He said
Well,
people broke away, and then when they came back, is that correct, from the breakaway session?
Yes, Chairperson.
Back into what we can call the plenary session.
Correct, Chairperson.
And presumably there were a number of breakaway sessions.
There were a number of breakaway sessions according even to the dates
and
the incidents.
These breakaway sessions took place in parallel, I take it. One group went to one room. Or to
yes,
one section,
and the other group went to
another group. If there were people who were not involved in the first group, but involved in another one, they went somewhere else.
Correct, Chairperson.
And then the groups came back. Colonel Visser was in.
He was sitting in the main room where feedback was going to be given. Each and every individual will go to him and type what you were telling him. And thereafter, then Colonel Visser and the others, they produce a document.
Is that so? The input fed into the actual police presentation through Colonel Visser. Is that what you're saying? You see, what I'm really just trying to understand, General, is whether there was a document at some stage that was produced out of each breakaway session, which was separate from the police presentation. Do you follow?
As I'm saying is that each individual went to Colonel Visser, and there Colonel Visser typed that feedback.
See, but the next question which Ms. Barnes is asking you, perhaps I should say trying to ask you, is at the end of it all, at the end of your group that was taking part in the discussion that we've just been busy with, what happened on the 13th near the railway line and so on, when Colonel Visser was finished with getting all the inputs from the people who spoke about that, and there were only about 5 or 6 of them, I think you said 4 or 5 of them, then obviously there was a document the completed document which he typed out. Now, did that go straight into the police presentation, or was that one of the preliminary documents which was used? Well, perhaps you wouldn't know the answer to that because you weren't involved. But as far as you could see, was that a document that went straight into the presentation, or as far as you could see, was that a document that was then used for the compilation of the police presentation? You understand what I'm asking you?
Yes, Chairperson. What I don't know is that after we have done that, precisely what happened, I do not know, but Colonel Visser will explain. But even there, one will indicate what has happened individually, whether it formed part or it didn't. But some of the others, on the final presentation, I did see them, that these were coming from the breakaway group.
Well, perhaps we can take you, General, then, if you would, to Exhibit G 140. J 140. This is a document which is entitled A Chronological Order of the notes for the incident. And then just below that, there's the heading, the 13th Monday, 2012. Now, what we have established is that this document was created and saved on the 28th of August, 2012. In order to establish that, we have produced a document which indicates the properties of this narrative, which we'd like to introduce as a new exhibit.
This is the document headed Chronological Order of the Notes for the Incident.
Yeah. I apologize. There seems to be some confusion with that particular document. So I wonder if I might just...
Well, I've got a document in my hand which says, which you gave me before we came in, which is headed, the main heading, is Document Properties for Exhibit JJ140, and then it starts a Chronological Order of the Notes for the Incident, 13 Monday 2012, and then Incidents.
Yes, that is...
And then on top of that is superimposed, as it were, is a document which I take it sets out the properties for that document, and there some kind person, thoughtful person, has put a red circle around the sections that deal with the date it was created, the date it was modified, the date it was accessed. Now, is that the document you want to put in?
That is indeed the document that we provided, but some confusion has since arisen in relation to that document, which I would appreciate an opportunity to sort out if I could perhaps just do that over lunchtime and then indicate.
So you don't want this document to be marked as exhibits. You propose to substitute for it a better document, which will have the benefit of your inputs and those of presumably your colleague who's sitting next to you over the lunch adjournment. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, if one has a look at this document, you have it in front of you now, General.
Yes, I have it in front of me, Chairperson.
Have you seen this document before?
I've seen it this morning, 6 o'clock.
So you never saw this document at Potchefstroom?
As I've said, is that how we compiled the documentations and everything. Yes, I do know the contents of what could have been there at Potchefstroom.
I'd like to refer you in particular...
Sorry, can I just ask a question before you carry on? Does this look like the document which Colonel Visser typed?
Correct, Chairperson.
It does look as if it's a document that was typed straight out because there are all sorts of little mistakes in it, which I take it would have been corrected later.
It is the one that was typed by Colonel Visser.
All right, thank you.
If you look at the second page of the document, the second paragraph says the following: General Mpembe gave instructions...
Sorry, let's wait for the page to be shown to us on screen.
Perhaps it'll be useful to start with the first paragraph. It says, the General warned them that by counts of 10 they will be forced to surrender the dangerous weapon. They did not listen to the General, and they decided to take the other direction leading towards the nearby settlement. They were followed towards the settlement. And then it says, General Mpembe gave instruction to corner the strikers in order to disarm and arrest them. After the instruction of cornering them was announced, the police ran after the strikers, and the strikers increased their walking pace towards the nearby settlement. I take it, General, that if you had seen this at Potchefstroom, you would have objected and said that's absolutely not true.
Chairperson, I want to put it again on record in my answer. I said to this commission what was said in my presence, and I denied it in my presence. I even said that, I even mentioned the name of the officer who said I gave the instruction, and it is there on my record as you quoted it before. I am the type of a commissioner who's not oppressing the information as it comes, but it has to be proven.
I take it, General, that as the police presentation, which is we now know as Exhibit L, was produced at Potchefstroom. It was obviously compiled over time. It was reviewed and amended from time to time at Potchefstroom. I take it you would have been involved in at least some of those reviews. Is that right?
I did say the last time that I was there, it was when I gave the information, and the latest information is when it was presented to the commission, and it was not even presented under oath. It was presented by Colonel Fesser. He was not under oath, and it was also presented by, I think he's also Lieutenant Colonel by then Scott. And they did present it not under oath.
General, I'm not...
Wasn't under oath doesn't mean very much, because presumably they wouldn't have told something different if it had been under oath as opposed to not being under oath. But you're correct. It was presented not as evidence, but really as preliminary evidential material to enable us to proceed with our work. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Correct, Chairperson.
Yes, General. I'm not talking about the stage at which the presentation was presented to this commission, but I'm still talking about Potchefstroom. Colonel Scott, in his evidence, said that in the second week of Potchefstroom, the presentation, as it then was presented twice. Were you at either of those presentations?
Yes, Chairperson.
Both?
Yes, Chairperson. But there were other documents that they do have, which I did not see. But the presentations, I did see them.
And you were satisfied with the presentation at that stage, insofar as it related to yourself at Marikana, is that right?
I said, Chairperson, I was not satisfied. The only issue that I raised in the presence of everybody, and not only in Potchefstroom, even in the commission, during my evidence in chief, I did reveal that even the officers said I did give an instruction, which I said I did not.
Yes, but General, didn't that take place in the breakaway session in the first week that we've just talked about, where that allegation was made by Captain Tupe and you denied it? Didn't that happen in the breakaway session?
Chairperson, I said it's both ways. It is in the breakaway, and the information, it was also filtered again. But I couldn't stop Captain Tupe to say this is what he said. But what I said in Potchefstroom and even in this commission is myself who revealed that what Captain Tupe said. I didn't hide it. And I said I did not give an instruction. If I gave any person instruction, I could have done so through the radio, which everybody could have heard.
Okay, if we could try and focus specifically on the two occasions in the second week of Potchefstroom where the presentation was made to the commanders. Right, you've just confirmed that you were at both of those presentations.
Chairperson, in my presence, maybe then we'll have to look at the attendance if there was any other one, because there were days that I could not attend. But I need to state clearly that in Potchefstroom, I did say that I did not give the command, and even in the commission, during my evidence in chief, I did say what Captain Tupe said there, even if it's captured by Colonel Fesser, but I still denied it. And in the commission, and even there, I said if I gave a command to Warrant Officer Kuhn or to whomever, it could have been through the radio, and everybody could have heard it.
Yes, we
more than one person would have fired tear gas too.
Chairperson.
I said presumably if you'd given the command over the radio and everyone had heard it, more than one person would have fired tear gas.
Correct, Chairperson.
I understand your evidence, General. I'm really just trying to establish, in the second week of Potchefstroom, when the presentation was made to you and the other generals, the people that had been in charge, you were satisfied at that stage that it correctly reflected the position as it related to you?
Chairperson, I said for the third time no, with reference to the instruction. I said it there no, even in the commission no, and I didn't hide it to the commission, because I know that if it does appear, it will seem as if I wanted to hide it.
Ms. Barnes, I've got a problem with this. I don't want to stop you asking the question because I think I see the point you're trying to make, and I don't want to hamper you. But, you know, we're trying to find the truth here. And what we do know is that earlier, which Mr. Shasterson referred to when he cross-examined Colonel Scott, earlier drafts of the presentation do reflect a statement, do contain a statement that the general gave this instruction. But the final version doesn't. So at some point, a decision was taken to delete it. And that seems to fit in with the point that he contended that this information was incorrect. But as I say, I don't want to stop you if you've got meaningful, focused questions on the point. You obviously have the fullest right to put them. But the point was, of course, made by Mr. Shasterson. He covered, admittedly, with this witness, with Colonel Scott, covered the various drafts and so forth. And there is a point beyond which it's clear that it is not the police version that General Mpembe gave the instruction. A previous assertion in earlier drafts was clearly abandoned and withdrawn. So presumably he wasn't involved in that. So that he's not the right person to ask about it. But that does confirm what he says, that he clearly stated at all material times that he didn't give that instruction. But if I'm wrong on that, you must correct me. But that's the way I see it.
I'm happy to move on. If we can go to the transcript, General, day 103, it's page 11093.
Do you have that page?
Yes, I do have it, Chairperson.
One 11093. I just need to find the line. If you could go down the page. Yes, line 13. You say, Chairperson, the emotions were extremely high, but as a senior officer at the scene, I did take control, cool up the members, and I said that the members should not follow the protesters because by that time I could see that there's no more any attack. And I said that we should withdraw and go back to the jock. See that?
I see, Chairperson.
Now, was that the stage at which you arrived at the scene at which the killings had just taken place?
It is on the scene, yes.
And when you arrived at that point where the killings had taken place, it was, I'm just trying to get the timelines correct. That's when it was clear to you at that stage that the police were no longer under attack. Is that correct?
So before you answer the question, I don't think it's appropriate to say he arrived on the scene. The fact is he was there all the time, wasn't he? I'm not quite sure whether arrived covers what you want to put, but the way it was put isn't entirely accurate.
Well, you arrived at the particular spot where the police officers had been killed. Is that the stage you're referring to in that passage?
I was working with the police all along, so I don't know whether I arrived at a particular place, but I was all the time with the police. And even when the attack took place, I was always with the police. I didn't go back to the jock or to sit in the office.
You haven't turned your machine on. Repeat what you said. It wasn't recorded the last time.
I'm not suggesting that you left the scene. I'm simply asking you to confirm that the stage you're referring to there is the stage at which you arrived or walked up to the spot at which the police officers had been killed.
The statement doesn't indicate that I was arriving. I said at the scene. So this indicates that I was always there with the police. Maybe I don't understand the question. But my understanding is that I was always with the police. So even if when the scene happened, it happened within my full-blown view.
At what stage did you say that the members should not follow the protesters? Because by that time you could see that there was no longer an attack.
Correct, Chairperson. That's when immediately after I was told by Colonel Farlam that my life was in danger. And then I also said we should no more follow the protesters.
Thank you.
At that point, had the protesters moved on, there was a situation where the protesters, or sorry, I prefer strikers. The strikers had stopped walking, and had, in fact, some of them at least had attacked some members of the police. That's correct. And there was something in the nature of a fight. And then, then when the fight was over, did the strikers move on?
Correct, Chairperson.
So, and when you said what you said here in the passage that's being put to you, that was said at a time when the strikers were no longer standing where the fight had taken place, but were in the process of moving away. Is that right?
Definitely correct, Chairperson.
So you were speaking to the members, and you said it was after Farlam had told you about the threat on your life. Did you say this in the presence of Lieutenant Colonel Farlam?
I said it to all the members who were there, and if Colonel Farlam was there at that time, I said it also to him.
If we can go now to a new exhibit. This is the presentation in relation to the path that the strikers took on the 13th of August.
Ms. Barnes, you've given us a document, rather a bundle of documents stapled together. The first document has the following on it: the position and direction of the strikers on 13 August 2012. Is this the document to which you are referring?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
And shall we give that the exhibit number HH59?
Thank you, Chair.
Is that what you want? Very well then. Exhibit HH59 is a document I'll just put the words in quotation marks on it. The position, quote, the position and direction of the strikers on 13 August 2012. I take it this is a document you have compiled, which you are wishing to put to the witness. Is that correct?
Yes,
it's
that's
not
right,
an original document. It's a document constructed for the purpose of the commission.
That's right. It's a document, General, that's been compiled by our legal team. It's an analysis of the likely path that the strikers took on the 13th of August. So if we can start on the first page of the presentation.
Before we proceed, Advocate Hemraj makes a suggestion which I think we should take on board. This document is not, this rather bundle of documents is not paginated. It might make it easier for us to follow when we later read the transcript, and easier for you while you're putting questions to the witness, and while the witness is endeavoring to answer if we number the pages. So the covering sheet we'll call 1. The second page that begins this presentation uses Google Earth, etc. We'll call 2, and then we'll number all the pages thereafter sequentially. So it means that the last page, which we'll number page 8, is the one headed, "The strikers did not visibly change direction." And then it has a number of entries in it in various colors of the rainbow. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct, Chair.
whether you want it, when you refer to it, you can either call it Exhibit HHH 59 point, give the page number, or page so-and-so, whichever you prefer.
So, sorry, Mr. Chairman. We are being told that this is the likely path that the strikers would have taken. What's the basis of that, Mr. Chairman? We don't have.
You mustn't ask me the question. We'll ask.
No. I'm asking.
We'll ask Ms. Barnes. Well,
I'm doing it through the chairman. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Barnes, you've heard the question that was addressed to me. May I delegate to you the duty of answering it?
Yes, that's precisely what the presentation addresses. is how the path was arrived at. So that's the purpose of the presentation. So if one starts on page 1, General, you'll see this is a...
No, I'm not sure you answered the question entirely fully. But let's take it page by page. No question arises in respect of the source of the information on the first page, nor the second, which merely gives you a Google Earth imagery on which you have made certain, indicated certain areas and stated in the key what they are. Right? Then, when we move to page 3, it may be that my colleague Advocate Hemroth has a suggestion.
Are you perhaps, Ms. Barnes, relying on evidence before us to plot these paths that you're suggesting?
It's partially, it is a combination. So it's a combination of information drawn from an Exhibit B in particular, and then
what is
video.
Exhibit B, please remind me?
Exhibit B is the crime scene pack. So, for example, we know when the inspection in loco was done, we know where bodies were found and where cartridges were found and so forth, and that's all captured in Exhibit B. So it's partly drawn from Exhibit B, and you'll see that particularly on page 12. It's partly drawn
Page
from...
12, we've only got,
page
8
4.
pages. Page 4.
It's partly drawn from the video footage, and then it is partly drawn from the Google Maps. And there are really 3 points that are plotted to create the path, and I can explain how each point, how each of the 3 points was derived.
I suggest that before you embark on this cross-examination, that we have some clarity when you say, for example, it comes from video footage, precisely where it comes from, so that I think we're all on the same page as to where this evidence emanates from that you were using to draw these conclusions as regards the path.
It seems a sensible and reasonable approach, if I may say so. It's now lunchtime, so perhaps thought can be given to this and the other matter that was you mentioned. Who has done the plotting? I can understand, Ms. Barnes, I can understand looking at what you prepared, that some of the pages are fairly self-explanatory in the sense that they indicate spots you've identified and then state in the key what they are. There are also excerpts from videos, so one can see from that the source of the information. But there are also, of course, documents that, or pages that have lines on them. We're not sure who drew the lines. One of the issues is going to be whether the line is correctly drawn, and that might depend upon who drew them and what the lines were based on. But perhaps these are all matters that you can address after lunch.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll take the lunch adjournment.